I don't do very well off little sleep. I don't think. I mean, I think a lot of men are weak like me. I don't know. It seems like women can. My wife can handle less sleep than me better than I can. But when I don't sleep, I don't do very well, and it doesn't take very much to throw me off. And so, as you can imagine, the last few weeks have been an interesting kind of challenge. But it's good. God is sanctifying me through it. But today's message, scriptural language about staying awake, I have to confess, has not always landed in a comfortable way for me. Specifically, if we were to take the scripture incredibly literally, we would come away with the impression maybe we're not ever supposed to go to sleep, like sleep is some sort of bad thing. But of course, we all know that that's not true. But still, the image is potent, and it means a lot. And think about all of the associations with sleep. I think it's a very helpful analogy. Jesus was wise in talking about staying awake. Think about how unpleasant it is to wake up, or how much you don't enjoy the person who is calling you to wake up. I think kids especially should know where I'm coming from right now. Although your parents probably are waking you up with deep feelings of love and compassion and wanting the best for you, you kids probably don't always enjoy it when your parents want you to wake up. And you adults, when your alarm calls you to wake up, don't necessarily always enjoy it. Or should the sun rise on you, you're not always grateful for the rising sun. But the point being that this call to wake up and stay awake is kind of uncomfortable by nature, but it is also incredibly comforting to think about what it means to be people of the light who anticipate the coming light. And so this week we're thinking about these passages that are holding in front of us the promise of the coming kingdom, like Isaiah's vision of a kingdom of peace and of justice where everyone has direct access to the Lord who is instructing them and judging and keeping peace. And that is the future that we anticipate. But in the right now, we are called to live as if that future is coming, like getting ready for that peace-filled, justice-filled future. And so we're called to wake up right now and stay awake. So we'll talk first about kind of this vision of peace that we've been given by Isaiah in the Psalm 122 that we read, but also about the connection between how we live right now and not just the judgment that we're preparing for, but what's coming after the judgment for the peace and the justice, the reign of God on earth, and how we can stay awake right now and get ready for him to come. And I'm actually changing in your bulletin. I try to include some notes. I did this 2 weeks ago and then didn't like what I wrote. So for what we're focusing on today is that to be ready for Jesus' return, we live now as if the future judgment and kingdom are already here. Okay, we live now as if the future is already here. So I love this passage from Isaiah, right? I hope we all do. It is a beautiful image of the peace that we anticipate, of all nations streaming to the mountain of God in Zion, which is another name for Jerusalem. Jerusalem is on a hill, and it's anticipating that one day the hill of God will be higher than all the other hills. And the idea there is in many ancient religions, hills or mountains were high places, and it was a place where heaven and earth meet. So it was a place where you could get closer to the gods. And for Israel, they only believed in one God, and they believed that the closest you could get to him was on top of this Mount Zion, which is not actually a very tall mountain. It's kind of more of a hill. I've never been there, but I'm told and I've seen pictures. And the idea there is if you want to be close to heaven, if you want to be close to God, you go to the top of Mount Zion where the temple was. And so this is imagining a future day when that hill will be raised up above all the others. It will be taller than all the mountains. And so there's this weird reality that right now it's this kind of comparatively small hill. It's almost like our God seems weak and small compared to all the others. But we anticipate a day when his high place will be higher than all the others, and it will be clear to everybody that he is the true God and that all the other high places and their gods are nothing compared to him. And so when he's on that high mountain, we see him judging between the nations. And it's there we have this very famous passage. If I remember correctly, if you go to like New York City and you see the United Nations, they have like a quote from the Bible there, from this, I believe it's this passage, talking about beating swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. It's this beautiful vision of there will be a day when we won't need weapons anymore, right? We will be at such peace with one another that all we'll need will be tools for making sure we have fruitful harvests. And so whether the United Nations wants to admit it or not, to some degree, they've acknowledged that part of the dream of the United Nations is a peace that the Bible describes best. But the thing that they might not be as willing to admit that we would is that peace only comes about through Jesus. And so the peace that's described happens because of basically two things. God is judge, and he's directly judging between the nations. You can imagine, like, the nations are having issues with each other, and they say, let's go take this to God, who's going to decide, and then he's the one that decides. And so God is judging, but also he is teaching. And so in verse 3, it says, come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For the law will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So peace happens when people are living under the righteous rule and judgment of God, and they are receiving instruction from him, when they are learning from him. Those are two absolutely necessary ingredients if you want peace in this world, and we're promised that peace in the world that is to come. So all of our passages are pointing toward the future, right? And it can seem like a far-off future. This future, where all nations are at peace and God is directly judging between the nations, can feel really far off when we look at Ukraine and Russia, which is, it seems like every few weeks the news changes on whether or not peace might be attainable, or, Gaza and Israel, or all of the other places where there is armed conflict in the world, and where it seems like we are absolutely incapable to negotiate and bring about true peace, right? And think about how different the means we have for peace are, right? In the best case scenario, peace comes from desiring a common good, but unfortunately, often throughout human history, wars are won by the mighty, right? Wars are won by those who outmaneuver and outpower the other, or who outlast. But the peace that's achieved in Scripture is not one necessarily achieved. It will be achieved by the might of God. When Jesus does come back, in Revelation, he has a sword protruding from his mouth, and with a simple word, he defeats all of his foes. That's how powerful he is. But the idea of him speaking a word and destroying his foes is that it is by virtue not of necessarily violence that God wins the day. It is by virtue of the sheer power of his creative word, of his ability to speak and things come into existence. And so when God judges and when he speaks the truth in instructing us, it creates a new reality, a new creation where peace and justice are truly possible. And so the vision of the Bible is one that peace only comes through justice, and justice can only be given by God himself. We're not very good at justice. The whole Bible's a story of humans trying to mete out justice and not doing it very well. But when God brings justice, it results in true peace. But that justice occurs not necessarily through the violence we've become accustomed to. It occurs through his word, through his instruction and his judgment. Now, Psalm 122 that we started out our worship with talks about praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And may those prosper who love you. And this is, I think, a good beginning place for what it looks like to anticipate that future, right? One way that we look for the coming future of when Jesus comes is by praying for it, by asking for the peace that he promises, right? I hope in your prayers daily that you are asking for peace across the world, for peace in Ukraine and Russia, peace in the Middle East, peace south of our border, peace within our nation, right? We anticipate the coming peace by asking for it right now. But also, part of it's not, we're not just anticipating a completely different future. We are anticipating a future that's very connected to where we are right now. In that psalm, we're praying for the peace of Jerusalem, a city that still exists. and regardless of your geopolitical stance and what you believe should happen with the nation state of Israel, it is a faithful and good thing to still pray for the peace of Jerusalem. It is for the good of every human on earth that there is peace in Jerusalem and that there is peace among his people. And to pray for peace and blessing upon that place and upon Israel is a good thing to do, even if you dislike everything that that nation state is doing or whether you approve of it. There is a connection between what is here now and what will be then. I think a lot of the time, because of certain scriptures, we imagine that after Jesus comes back, the new heavens and new earth will be like so different from here that none of this geography will matter. And none of this will matter. You know, it's all going to disappear. You might quote, I think it's like 2 Peter, where it talks about everything being melted and dissolving, and it's kind of like, man, everything's destroyed. But rather than everything just kind of being completely flattened and destroyed and having a totally new creation, the idea is that it is burned with fire and purified. And so what comes on the other end is not completely, totally alien from right here and right now. It's connected to it. So when we get our resurrection bodies, you know, you're not going to be, you know, go from looking like a 20-year-old, you know, young college student to being looking like a 70-year-old, you know, woman. You're going to have, your resurrection body will be different from the body you have now, but it will also be similar. And how exactly that's going to be, Scripture doesn't spell out for us, but the body you have now has a connection to the body you will have then. Similarly, this world, although it will be purified, the geography of it, I think there is very good cause to believe, isn't going to be completely changed so that, you know, in the new creation you're going to say, what was Jerusalem? What was that city that people fought over for millennia? No, you will know what Jerusalem is because it will still be the place where the mountain of God is found. Now, some people will disagree with that, but let's argue over Scripture. But we should pray for all things, anticipating what is to come. But let's go on to talk more about how we can kind of stay awake. So that analogy of being ready by staying awake. How many of you enjoy it whenever you're really tired and someone is trying to keep you awake? Nobody. And here's the reality, like, all of us are tired. That's a part of what it means to live in this world, in this life. And that's what can make reading the Scriptures, that's what can make living faithfully to God feel kind of hard, because it can feel burdensome to be told through the Scriptures and by your pastor, stay awake, wake up. You know, we're all tired. You know, I feel it. I feel it with you. I feel it more than I ever have before, right? Like when you're tired, you want to sleep. And we are all burdened by the cares of this life and by the darkness of the world. And we all want relief from that. We all are tired of the darkness and want the light to come. And a lot of time it feels like, man, that's not helpful to tell me to wake up, you know? Another way of thinking about this analogy is, you know, how many snoozers do we have in the crowd? Yeah, we got some snoozers. Oh, that was mean of me to make you raise your hands. Yes, yeah, so snoozing is always a temptation. You know, you tell yourself you need to wake up slowly, and you kind of got to get used to the idea of getting up. Now, the reality is you are ruining your sleep until you wake up, you know? And so I've always preached and tried to live out, not always perfectly, never put your alarm next to your bed, right? Because what happens when it's next to your bed? Snooze. You're done. Go back to sleep. You can enjoy living the lie for a little bit longer that you can keep sleeping, right? Rather, you know, place the alarm across the room. So you have to get up out of bed, and it takes that much more to get back under the sheets. And so in our Romans passage today, Paul says, you know, wake up now. He doesn't place the alarm far away and say, like, you've got some time. You can get used to the idea that Jesus might be coming soon. You know, and he says, do this knowing the time that it is already the hour for you to awaken from sleep. For now salvation is nearer than when we believed. The night is almost gone. The day is near. Wake up now. You know, he's not given us a whole lot of room to get used to it. And for 2,000 years, Christians have been preaching, Jesus could come any second. he could come right now. And so we need to get ready and not be hitting the snooze button. This message to stay awake is hard news for a lot of us, or to wake up. So for in spiritual terms, there are many people who are asleep, who do not know that Jesus is coming soon and that they are not prepared. And for them, the message is, wake up now. You don't have time. Get up, get prepared. And then for those who have been awoken by God and know that Jesus is coming soon, the message is, stay awake. Don't fall asleep. Right? So we have parables about 10 virgins, who aren't ready. 5 of them are not ready. Or we have people who are asleep when the master of the house comes. It's a temptation for those of us who follow Jesus to kind of get lulled back into kind of a passive way of living towards Christ. Our final passage with Luke is, this famous passage where Jesus is talking about when the Son of Man will return. And it's one that's often interpreted as a reference to the rapture, the idea that when Jesus returns, that, you're going to have people sucked up into the sky, and then whoever's left are the people who, got left behind. You had that famous Left Behind series. Well, actually, it's important to note that that is not what's happening in this passage. In Luke chapter 24, where he talks about this, he compares this to the days of Noah, right? And so he gives us some, just in the days of Noah, when people were eating and drinking, marrying and being given in marriage, he says, so when the Son of Man comes, there will be 2 at the mill. One will be taken, the other one will be left. Now, that language of being taken and left is important. In the days of Noah, who was left and who was taken? Who was swept away and who remained? Was it the righteous, Noah and his family, who were taken away? No, it was the wicked who were taken away by the floodwaters. And so in this passage where Jesus is describing his coming, he's saying, in that day, when one is taken, that is the wicked. It's like the flood of destruction. God's judgment is coming to take away the wicked. And the person who remains is the righteous one, the one who has been preparing, like Noah and his family. This is actually a constant theme throughout Scripture. Those things that are good are unshakable. They remain. The heavens and earth one day will be shaken, and it will be, everything will be, the foundations of the earth will be shaken. But everything that remains is what God desires for his people. And so also here, the righteous person is the one that remains. And here's kind of the point. It's back to what we were saying before about how you live now is supposed to be an anticipation of what's coming. The people who are taken are people who've been living their whole lives unprepared to stay. The people who are going to receive the judgment of God are the people who are not looking for God's kingdom to come on earth, who are not preparing themselves. And so they will be removed from that kingdom. The vision of Jesus coming in judgment is not really of us going up to heaven. It's actually of Jesus coming down to earth and bringing his kingdom with us. With him, to bring heaven back down to earth and so that we can live with God. And so the final picture of the Bible is of Jesus being face to face, living among us. He is our light, our sun, and we are all living with him in the new city, in the new creation. And so if we love Jesus and we are excited for his coming and we are preparing ourselves, we will live now with this body and this creation on this geography with these relationships as if he is not only coming in judgment, but also imagining and working towards what it will look like after he is judged. And peace has come and justice is reigning and it's here on earth. So here again, the call to wake up today and to stay awake, to not put it off. How do we get ready for him to come? How do we, when he comes, how will it be clear to us and to him that we were ready and waiting for him to return? One, he will see that we have been living our lives being reshaped, being reformed for that future reality of living forever with him. And so the main thing that I would point you toward is we will live lives of peace, pursuing peace, anticipating a kingdom of peace. You know, if God comes and he finds nations and he finds people who have been working against peace in this lifetime, they will not be a clear fit for the kingdom where peace is all that is, right? Just as he will be looking for people who've been worshiping him now to worship him then, he will be looking for people who've been building towards peace now to be at peace then, right? And so the general encouragement would be to prepare ourselves by being peacemakers now. But also, I want to give some practical encouragement about how to prepare ourselves. For thousands of years, Christians have prepared themselves through seasons like Advent, taking times, weeks, and months to get really serious and focus on Jesus is coming. You know, I find it so helpful to spend a whole month, 4 weeks thinking, okay, Jesus could come any day now. Honestly, this should be every day, all year. But having 4 weeks to really focus on it is so good for me every year to think, okay, I've been living like I've got time, but what if Jesus comes today? Am I ready? And then there are many ways that we can prepare ourselves. Yes, as Debbie said, we can read scriptures, we can pray, we can fast. One way that I am terrified of, that I've never actually done, is stay up all night in prayer. It's called a vigil. And Jesus did it when he was before selecting his 12 disciples. He did it before going to the cross. And guess what? Peter, James, and John couldn't hold up, and I'm a little bit scared that I can't either. I have never pulled an all-nighter, and I don't ever intend to, right? Like, I got through undergrad and graduate school with one time staying up until like 3, and then I just couldn't do it, and I fell asleep for an hour, and that was the longest I ever stayed up. And I know how many of you have pulled all-nighters, right? Many of you. So you're better prepared than I am. And if you survived, good for you. You could do a vigil. But this is one of the ways that some of the more intense Christians in the past have prepared for Jesus, was by staying up all night, praying and preparing for him. But also, we prepare for him to come by living righteous lives of loving our neighbors, by pursuing peace with others. And so, yes, we're preparing every Sunday when we come here to worship, but we're also preparing whenever we serve the hungry, whenever we clothe the naked. And so, friends, stay awake this week, and stay awake every day, and wake up if you're asleep, and do not take for granted that you have until tomorrow. If there is something that needs to get adjusted in your life today in order to be prepared for a kingdom of peace tomorrow, whether that is peace in your heart that is needed or peace with another, do all that is in your power. And if I may leave you with an encouragement, we wake up because the sun rises. We see the light because it shines on us and it shows the way before us. Our God is not one who leaves things perpetually dark and nevertheless calls us to wake up. He is one who comes to us with rays of light that are not only illuminating for the way forward, but warm us, right? Light is not just revelatory, it is warm. And so God will not leave you alone as some sort of rude alarm clock or bell ringing from the opposite side of the house, coldly calling you to wake up. God comes to us as warm light to show us the way and to give us the warmth we need to get through the day. And so be encouraged that in the call to wake up, God has not left you alone. He is actually guiding you and drawing you to himself. And so we're people who don't hate the light because it's ruining our sleep. We love the light because it is bringing us into life. We love the light so much that we are like people who wake up early in the morning while it is still dark, and we wait for the sunrise. And we look for the morning star that tells us it is just about to shine. Amen.